Thank you for joining us today. Thank you so much for being here. We will give everybody just a couple minutes to join. And in the meantime, I'm going to toss a quick icebreaker at our lovely panelists today. And that is just going to be a nice, easy one, nothing too crazy. We're just going to talk about what summer plans everyone is most excited for. So I'm going to go ahead and pass it off to Sydney first.
So yeah, Sydney Strader, VP of Customer Success at Catalyst. Super excited to be here today. So summer plans I'm most looking forward to. As you can see, I'm working for the outdoor office right now. And days like this are limited in Canada. So for me, it's all about getting outdoors. I love tennis. I love golf. Love kayaking, tubing, wakeboarding, you name it. So it's just maximizing my time outdoors more than anything.
Yeah, you got to take advantage of that sunshine. It's beautiful. Okay, let's go to Chris next. And don't worry, I will have a more formal intro and not just toss first names at you all later. But Chris, go ahead.
Sure. Yeah, I think similar to Sydney, all the outdoor activities I can get my hands on. Some boating, fishing, paddle boarding, kayaking, if it's not too hot actually, and bike riding. Honestly, it's just like in summer, some of it's just cutting out a little early on a Friday and getting a few hours of fun in.
You got to do it. You got to take advantage while we can. Okay, let's go to Paul next.
My big plans for the summer. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, you sound great.
Cool. I'm going to go to Charleston. I'm going to spend a week there with some good friends, and it's going to be awesome. Like many people, I picked up bird watching during COVID because it was an outdoor activity that seemed fun. So I'll probably do a lot of bird watching while I'm there. It's going to be good.
Ooh, I like that. What kind of birds are you on the lookout for in Charleston?
I don't know. I don't know what kind of birds live there. Hopefully that they're exotic and wild, right? They want to be
Yeah,
things I've never seen before, but I'm sure there'll be a lot of things that I see all the time. They're
sure,
birds.
sure. They're birds. You'll get something good out of it. Okay, great. Let's go to Mark. Oh, Mark, we can't
Miami.
hear. Oh, there we go. Now we can hear you.
Sorry about that. I've been here in Miami for just about a year. I moved here from Canada. Hey, Sydney. And I moved from the same province, actually. And I have a plethora of sunshine and water activities, which I have not part for the next 3 months. I'm essentially just going to be in and on the water as much as I can.
Awesome. All right. And let's go ahead and get into our event. It looks like we've had quite a few folks be able to join. So for those of you not familiar, today's event is brought to you by the team at Modern Sales Pros. And Modern Sales Pros is the world's largest and highest quality community of those in sales management, sales leadership, sales and revenue operations, and sales enablement, aka our Modern Sales Pros, including all of these amazing folks at amazing companies here. So, our mission is to create an environment for members to answer questions they would struggle to solve on their own and help them see around corners they may not even know exist. We do that through live sessions like this one, where we get to work with some amazing folks here. We do have a sign up for speakers and moderators if you see yourself on the other side of the camera here. And we also have an online forum and our quarterly summits. We're just getting back into in-person events, so we hope to see you at those as well. And if you're not already a part of MSP, you'll be invited to join right after this event. Speaking of summits, we do have a summit coming up, which I think will be the most fun one because it is during the summertime. So we have our Revenue Excellence Summit happening this July 12th through the 14th. We've pulled together 17 events of so much amazing content and some amazing speakers. You'll hear from the CEO of Zoom, SalesLoft, Clary, as well as the president and COO of Gong, and a lot of sales leaders at HubSpot, Julie, Outreach, Atrium, and so many more. I will be tossing the link in the chat in just a moment. So get yourself signed up if you haven't already. We are indeed bringing back in-person events in New York City, Austin, and San Francisco. So if you're around any of those, would love to see you there. It's going to be a good one. And we cannot go on today without talking about Chili Piper, who has been an amazing sponsor to work with. Chili Piper is the most advanced qualifying, routing, and booking software used by top B2B revenue teams. Their mission is to reinvent the system of action of revenue teams to provide them with new levels of productivity and job satisfaction. So they've been great to work with, a long-time partnership with MSP, and we love to have them. And I will be getting into the event in just a moment here, but just to cover our bases and let you all know what to expect, we have some housekeeping notes. So first and foremost, this event is indeed being recorded. Like all of our standard events, you'll be able to access the recording and key takeaways on the previous events page of MSP's website, as well as on our YouTube channel. And secondly, if you have a question for our panelists, we want to hear from you. The more you give, the more you get. So the more we can make it interactive, the better it's going to be for everybody. And you get to ask the experts some questions on all of your CS motions. So please use the Q&A function, and we'll be sure to get to them during the event. So now for the fun part, let's go ahead and get introduced to our amazing panelists here today, the reason you are all here. First up, we have Paul Peters, the Director of CS at Verizon. Paul, go ahead and tell us a little bit more about yourself.
I've been with Verizon since 2009. We help customers around the world with sales performance management, which is how people work their revenue journey, right? So if you do planning or analysis or rewards programs, if there's any type of revenue involved, we can help you on that journey. We're based out of Toronto, Ontario. I myself am out of Detroit, Michigan. Thanks for having me today.
Awesome. Thank you for being here, Paul. We love Verizon. We work with them as well, and they've been great. Next, let's go to Sydney Strader, the VP of CS at Catalyst.
Yeah, hey, thanks for having me as well. Sydney Strader, VP of Customer Success at Catalyst. Catalyst is a customer success platform. So super meta role, as I was talking to the fellow panelists earlier, leading CS at a CS company, working with amazing peers each and every day in the CS industry. And we really are orienting the platform around centralizing all of your customer data, surfacing those insights, prescribing action to your customer success team, and then driving impact and helping you as a CS leader understand the impact that your day-to-day CSM's actions and activities are driving towards maximizing net revenue retention. So learning lots, great fun, and very excited to be here today.
Amazing. Thank you so much for joining. And next, we are going to go to Mark Belgraves, Growth Advisor at Growth Robot.
Hey guys, can you hear me?
Yes, you sound great.
So I'm Mark Belgrave, founder of Growth Robot, which is a scaling agency, help SaaS and high-ticket sales companies scale through RevOps and Magic. We do a bit of Magic. And I started my career as an individual sales rep, which gave me a real love for the art and science of sales, and hence my interest in this panel, how to use CS to drive lead gen.
Amazing. Thank you, Mark. Okay, and last but certainly not least, we are going to pass to your guide and moderator for the day, Chris Feza, the founder at Admin Within. So I'll be back on for a few words at the very end, but other than that, I'm going to let these experts take it from here. So Chris, go ahead and introduce yourself and take it away.
Sure. Yeah, thanks, Joni. Chris Feza, as mentioned, founder of Admin Within. We started as a revenue operations as a service consulting company, so helping companies break into revenue operations on kind of a fractional and flexible basis, from Series A on upwards to larger enterprises, and helping people kind of put in place the process and technology to enable their companies to scale effectively. So happy to be moderating here today. I've got a great panel, and this is definitely customer success, something that's kind of near and dear to my heart, and I think is was only becoming increasing in importance, and especially with the current climate is more important than ever. So yeah, let's jump right in. High level agenda for today's discussion. So our speakers are going to be talking about these three key areas. So the first is, how do you design that scalable customer experience? So making it consistent and thinking about how to architect that process. The second is, once you've got the process designed, how do you set the goals and the KPIs that you're using to track the success of your team members and the process in general. And then, the third thing is then how do you, take your established customer success motion and use that to drive, net new business in the door for your company. So kind of things like moving in a certain order that makes sense is kind of how we try to structure the discussion so that we're sort of building on the topic before it. Cool. Let's jump into the first point. So on designing the consistent, scalable customer experience, we have a couple kind of high-level bullets here that our panelists have provided. But maybe let's kind of just go around the horn. And Sydney, starting with you, how do you think about designing the process here?
Yeah, for sure. So I think mine was leveraging the past and present. That was my bullet. And the takeaway here from my experience and learnings is just sitting down with customers, customers who have gone through a renewal and decided like, hey, we've been with you for a year and we want to continue to invest. Customers who have decided to expand their investment, and customers who have decided to churn. And to understand like what happened at what stages of their journeys that contributed to their experience leading to those outcomes, whether it was a renewal, whether it was expansion, whether it was ultimately deciding to move on, and then understanding where those like high value engagements were. I think one of the biggest beasts in customer success is you end up building a lot, doing a lot of process, and the hard challenge is like what's actually moving the needle and what's not. And so like through data and technology and in customer success platforms, certainly helpful. But starting with your customers, understanding what reverse engineering to those desired outcomes look like is something that I found to be impactful.
Awesome. Yeah, that definitely makes sense. And I think that like thinking about what people's experience has been thus far is always a good way to shape where you're going to go looking forward. And I think like any business, we're all trying to evolve and get better over time. So making sure that we're really applying that historical knowledge, I think is key. Paul, from your perspective, what is it?
For me, I think I always start with you want to create an exceptional experience. It's really hard to recover if you have a bad first impression, or if you get to a point where you've got buyer's remorse early on. So striving for that exceptional experience is probably however you define that, right? It could be individually as a contributor for customer success. Like, what is that exceptional experience I'm going to provide to my customers? And by defining that, you've got a certain goal in life. If you don't achieve it, you keep striving for it. What does that mean? What is going to be acceptable for me? And you iterate to make sure that you've got that success. It's a lot easier to continue to go forward with momentum if you've got a good exceptional experience. If you go to that opposite, the criminal level experience, you have an awful time trying to recover from that. So for me, it's setting that high standard, whether it's personally, whether it's on the team, if it's processes. Once you just determine what that's going to be, it's easier to start to make sure you've got the continuity of delivering that. The second thing I would say is critical to the success here is to understand your customers. You want to understand, I think, three things. What do they love? What do they hate? And what do they need from you? Segmentation is a good example of that forward movement that you want to make. And segmentation and analytics can really help you understand those things. But people don't like to be numbers. They don't like to be placed in buckets. They want to build a relationship with you. And if you're going to go take care of some customers, knowing what they love, knowing what they hate, and what they need is really going to help you to deliver a value of that exception that you need to get to. If you can get those basic things right, it's pretty easy to then scale it forward to say, we're always moving forward with this kind of agreed upon movement with exceptionalism.
Yeah, that makes sense. I want to kind of, double click or dive in a little bit further on probably actually both these points. So the first one is making a great first impression, and I've totally had similar experiences to Paul. What you mentioned, if you start strong, you've already built trust. You're on a much better footing. Maybe can you give an example, like more concretely, of kind of specific steps you would take to make sure that you are starting strong based on some of your past customer experiences, or even flip side, what was an example of when it didn't happen, and how did you where did that leave you in terms of trying to bring things back up to a good level?
I'm in software, so my example is going to be software and technology. My apologies to anybody in medical devices or other fields of interest, pharmaceuticals, whatever. But in the software world, there's a part where they have an early process of adoption. Adoption's critical. You adopt the product or you die, ready? Because you've got to always be innovative. You've got to be satisfying the customers. Well, that first step in the process is to become a good partner with your sales rep. You have to have a good team to support these things in a process that takes you from the sales to the implementation through the customer lifecycle. The customer success manager really needs to be a part of that. And it's not to hold the hand of the customer, but it's there to make sure that they've got the proper guidance and assistance. So if you have that good handoff, like a baton in a marathon or a relay race, my apologies, that baton in the relay race, from the sales team to the customer success manager, that continuity of success is going to prepare you for having good momentum forward. But I've worked for in the past and have heard stories about companies that don't do that transition well. And that transition, that early first step, is so key to the success that they kind of fall apart, or they tend to recover 6, 9, 10 months later when things are going along, and they're like, "Oh, it's a surprise that this is happening." Well, that's because you're not building that relationship out. You didn't. You weren't running with your team. You were trying to do some things on your own, or you were too busy focused on things. I think part of that is also having the right ratio. There are some companies out there that say the number of customers to customer success managers, you can give the person 1,000 or 2,000 customers and go maintain and manage those. But if that CSM were to come to me and say, "Oh, I've got an intimate relationship with all 2,000 of my customers," I don't believe you, right? It's got to be something that's manageable, where you can actually help and address and go to that clarion call that you have as a customer success manager to help those customers be successful, whatever that might be defined as. I think early on in that process, that handoff, that team building, that process is pretty important to that.
Yeah, and with the goal to get them into a quicker adoption, a time to value, where they're able to use the software and start to realize some of the benefits of what drove them to originally purchase it.
Exactly
I'm curious, right. Is that something that you guys are tracking as kind of one of your key metrics? Is like, when are they fully live or implemented, that sort of thing?
Yeah, it's something that you always have to strive for, because even though we might have a good process in place, going back and making sure that everybody's on board with that process, there's no slips, that the new person on board knows how to hand off, or the new person knows the right person to contact, right? So it's a continual grooming process. Even though you might have a good thing in place, you can't take it for granted. Am I slaving over it every night and day, losing sleep? No, but it's something you want to continuously groom once you put those good things in place. It's one of those top 10% things that you've got to address to make sure customers are happy.
Yeah, one thing that I'd add, Paul, on top of that, or what I've seen, is that I've found that often the customer experience has fallen on the shoulders of CS. Like, define that, hold us accountable to it, when in reality, like, this is a company experience at the end of the day. And so I think it is really critical that the leadership from the CEO down is always championing the customer experience. And I was on a separate panel last week, and they were talking about like customer-led growth, and instead of like product-led growth. And what it meant by was like, customer data always trumps any data we're looking at to drive decisions for the business, and doing that will optimize for the best customer experience, ultimately us aligning to the right ICP, the right product roadmap aligned to that, maximizing that revenue retention as a result. So I think that that's a big, sometimes in many organizations, a battle that CS leaders have to navigate to try and get that justification and like buy-in of like CS at the center, like customers are critical. But when done right, and I'm obviously in an advantageous position being CS at a CS company, like it is incredible to see just how powerful that is when everyone is marching in the same direction with the same DNA default of like customer first, customer experience, customer intentionality. It's really great.
I love that.
And to your
I
point,
love that.
sorry, Mark, jump in.
Oh, yeah, sure. I love the segue because there's the what and the why, and my focus is on the how. Like everything that you guys just said. Well, how do you accomplish this? So I take it back to first principles. I mean, I'm a computer engineer by training, so I kind of tend to decompose things as systems. And if you look at business, like a startup is a temporary organization that's looking for a profitable unit case. And business is a more permanent organization that scales that profitable unit case. So in the beginning, you're looking for like, what is the valuable thing that this niche, which is a specific set of people in a specific circumstance with a specific problem and a specific desire for a specific transformation, what do these people really value? And then you sell that, and then you work like heck to, as a startup, to like figure out how to do it. Is it magic beans? Are we typing on keyboards? Is it code? Is it software? Is it, like Paul said, is it a drug or something like that? And then you deliver the thing. And then you're like, oh, okay, so this is how we deliver the transformation. And then you scale that up. So if you think of RevOps as being, if you think of CS as being part of RevOps, which is, RevOps is anything that increases the velocity or acceleration of revenue, right? So CS is part of that. If you think of it that way, well, I just blanked out. Where was I going
That's
with that?
okay.
I guess my point is that, right. So RevOps is, broadly speaking, people, process, and technology. And the how is, first of all, have product market fit, which is that whole process of you figure out the value and how to deliver it. And now you want to replicate that, right? So definitely have a market, definitely find product market fit. But then it's the people that you hire. They have to be on board they have to be in love with this value that they're delivering. And that starts with sales, but it also ends up in CS. People who really listening very carefully to
Oh, we might have lost Mark. Okay.
Uh-oh.
Well, while he's is he back? Okay. I think he's before we move on to the next slide, I did want to say, Sydney, one of the things you mentioned is like,
and
think
take it
about
back to marketing, for example. So to me, that's the how.
All right, Mark, I think we lost you in the middle of that section of that thought. I was just gonna wrap by saying, one thing that this kind of consistent experience is thinking about, like, Sydney, you mentioned, how do we be a little more customer led? And I think one of the trends that I've seen too is, a lot of people have gone from not just tracking loss reasons or churn reasons, but they actually want to track why they won deals, why a customer decided to take the plunge with them, and why a customer is staying or is expanding the relationship. And better understanding that, because those are the positives that you can then make sure that you're properly utilizing throughout your experience. You learn just as much from the wins as the losses, kind of thing.
Yeah, 100%. And I think that's where like Mark's role in RevOps is so critical. Like the position I always put myself is like, when I'm going into the board meeting, like, what's the story I want to be able to tell? And do I have the data that allows me to communicate that narrative? And if not, I'm partnering real close with someone like Mark's team to be like, okay, here's what data we need to get, which is like why our customers were doing. That's a question I get from my board all the time, which is like, Sid, what is working? And why is it working? And how do you triple down on what's working? And so definitely agree that having the lens of like, what have we learned from those who have moved on, but also like equally, what have we learned from those customers that truly are good fit customers that are doing what we want the business to do, which is attract them, retain them, and then expand them. And how do we triple down on the motions that we can repeat at scale that drive those outcomes?
Yeah, exactly. Cool. All right. Thank you, everyone. Let's move on to the next topic. So we kind of covered the design and how to think about approaching your customer success experience. So now that we've got that, how do you think about creating goals, mapping them to the customer journey to really like make it quantifiable and trackable for how you're measuring the success of your customer success process in your customer interactions? So I'll start with Paul this time.
Well, for me, I think it's the thing is to set clear expectations. If you can clearly articulate exactly where we're going, what we're going to be doing, whether it's the company or the department or the team or the individual, it's much easier to hold people accountable on the other end of that. Our software happens to do sales compensation or variable compensation. And many of the people who are doing customer success are interested in reoccurring revenue. So there's a clear connection of if you're doing the right things, you get rewarded for those right things. It's a drive for better behaviors. It's doing the things that are going to keep your customers retained. And customer retention is that huge thing. I always try to look as an early indicator of our fiscal year of how much leadership is willing to bet on reoccurring revenue, right? I know it's going to be a good year, and we've got a confident leadership team if that number is high. And I can start to set my goals throughout the year for my team and our expected outcomes based on our aggressive nature for that. So in recent years, of course, COVID's been putting big question marks over that. But if you're going in like us and you've got customers who've been around for 15, 12 years, in software, that's a really long time. And it's a different strategy than what you would have if your customers are brand new, if you're just starting up. Your tactics and your strategies are going to be very, very different. So a lot of the things that we do are based on what I mentioned earlier, which is segmentation. And you can divide up those segments in a lot of different ways. And because of the longevity of our customers, we tend to do this on a maturity curve. So if you're very mature, if you've got legacy tenure within our customer community, you probably have a different set of needs than someone who purchased the software 6 or 7 months ago. And understanding and building up the right person to connect with those groups, the right customer success manager, the right programs, the right education, the right support protocols and actions. Those are the things that I think need to be marked and measured along the way. It's often said that you can't manage what you don't measure, right? I think that's how it's said. Back in the 1950s, Peter Drucker, I think, wrote that in his book. So it's important for us to measure the right things. What's the right thing for you? You can't measure everything. So you have to determine that at the beginning of your year, your quarter, your end of what's going to be best for you. For me, it's about longevity. It's about legacy customers. It's about attracting new customers and providing them high level of satisfaction. But it's probably going to be different for everybody out there. But if you're clear about what you want to do, where you want to go, I think that's a great first step to be able to measure and manage those things.
So you actually segment the customers, and then you would have, one, it sounds like different CS reps plus different KPIs depending on the customer segment.
I've got different groups of customers, and I've got different groups of customer success managers managing those accounts. They've got very different needs. Customers that are legacy enterprise is going to be very different than a small mid-sized company who's pretty new, right? And if you treat all your customers exactly the same, you're going to get a lot of unhappy people and they're going to move to another product. So what we try to do is treat them as individuals, address what their individual needs are, and then reward on the right things that make that happen. We want retention. We want reoccurring revenue, like a lot of people. That's the name of the game. If you are not adopting and adapting to our new products or new releases or spending some dollars on some new licenses in software, it makes it real hard for you to stay around. So we try to reward on those things.
Yeah, that makes sense. Cool. And Mark, from your perspective, making some assumptions that if you're working with, growth stage, scaling businesses, they're probably earlier, in their customer journey. Those customer relationships are shorter. What are some of the KPIs that you would put in place for the companies you're working with?
Great question. So an additional bit of color is that not only do I tend to work with growth stage companies predominantly, so none of my customers are enterprise. I also work a lot in the high ticket space. So this is
Audio
is it just you and me, Chris?
Everyone? Yeah, seems like Mark's audio is out. Okay.
One of the things that Mark was, I think, getting into there is that even though he's got different. Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
We lost you for a second, Mark.
Oh, I'm not sure where you lost me. Yeah, I think my internet connection is not so good. Anyway, my point is that I sell to high growth as well as to SaaS, and the KPI that's most relevant is also adoption. Like that's the number one KPI. In the high ticket sales world, people tend to sell off case studies. You're selling a service, you're selling an intangible. People need to see themselves in video testimonials. So they need to see 3 or 4 and they go, oh, I could picture myself as that person, therefore buying this product or service. And adoption is how you know that people are actually getting
All right, I think we should, we lost the end of that as well too. I will, I'm going to hand it over to Sydney for her thoughts in a second. I'll say that the one thing that that has come up that I think that really both of you, mentioned is making sure that we're like working up front to, reestablish like what are the customer goals. What are the specific things they're hoping to achieve by working with you, and then using that as your checkpoint. When you're talking with them, seeing how they're doing against those goals over time. Are you helping them, reach those? Are things headed in the right direction, or have their goals changed? Which is important to know as well too, as you're working with some of these companies are dynamic and may change in between monthly or quarterly touch points as well too. But Sydney, from your experience, what are the KPIs that you've focused on primarily?
Yeah, definitely a lot of what you just spoke to there and what Paul and Mark have shared. So I think for us, going back to like Paul's first comment around like the customer experience, right? Like there is a natural progression by which a customer signs and then starts, kind of the adoption process. And that may be from like day one implementation, like just getting integrations in place as an example. And there's a natural progression for them to further ingrain, adopt the product. And I think like orienting around, first of all, like why did they buy? What pain are they trying to solve? What is the value that they're looking to extract? And how and when would they want to quantify measuring that to say like they're getting the appropriate ROI on their investment? And then, creating kind of the journey that guides them on their way to achieving that. So for us at Catalyst, we have basically mapped out what those life cycle stages are. And then what we've done is we have put playbooks in each of those life cycle stages to help drive the natural progression through that stage. So one, it gives us like the ability to articulate to the customer, like, hey, you're in implementation, and this is what a successful implementation looks like. Here are the steps that need to be achieved, and here's how we're progressing against those. At the end of this, you'll be able to get ABC value related to like what you're looking to get value from our platform on. But the other piece that I love is that we have health scores that are associated with segmentation of your customer base and or the stage of the life cycle that they're at. So like what a customer looks like as healthy in implementation could very much differ from a customer like to Paul's stage who's like ingrained, right? Like you referenced, like a customer who's been with you for 2 years is a very different stage of customer relative to someone who is 3 months in. And so I really love our ability to be flexible and kind of incorporating the KPIs into the health measures so that we are able to effectively assess, are the CSMs driving the right actions and activities to correlate to a healthy customer at that stage based on where they are with us.
I think everything you said was awesome. The one thing I would take away from everything you said was, in my experience, you want to continue to look at what you're doing and make sure that you're eliminating any unneeded complexity, because that kind of a program, like, oh, well, we're going to do this, and then we're going to do this, and then we'll put this on top. It's like layer after layer of things you want to do, and some of them might be really cool ideas, but that kind of bogs you down over time at some point. So removing that complexity, not that I'm saying Sydney does this, but I know I've fallen into that trap a couple of times too. When you put those kind of programs into play, it's be as succinct as possible when you do it. Adding the layer of complexity it'll cost you time and money and confusion in the long run.
100%. And I think that's where like leaning into technology comes into play to help surface like of the calories being burned, what is impactful and what is just literally, cool idea, but not actually moving the needle. And unfortunately, a calorie burn that's not constructive. So yeah, 100% Paul, I've seen these things get way too complicated, way too complex, and that it's counterproductive for both the internal team and the customer in understanding how to go from A to B.
Great way to put
Hey,
it.
I just had a quick thought. I don't know if Paul covered this because I couldn't hear his talk track just now, but what I've seen work really well is the use of call intelligence software, which is really something that's more used by sales teams, but the use of call intelligence software to help define the metrics and KPIs. So I don't know if that's something that you guys have seen or experimented with in your companies.
It's definitely something I've seen for our clients. They're utilizing that a fair amount to just understand, what are the things that people are kind of calling out as like most important or priorities, and that's relative in the sales process, but also in the success process and ongoing relationship, and seeing what are common themes. Also, like seeing what's evolving. Let's say you're selling to a specific industry and they've got like a new compliance standard or something like that they need to meet. It might be coming up more and more, in some of those conversations. And so kind of getting that intelligence so that you realize then how to, create a standardized message around it for your team or company. I think is a use case that we've seen. One of the things I think that I also wanted to mention, before we move on is just, I think part of it too is how do you create that right balance of, you guys mentioned, not trying to do too much, keep it simple, but also like meeting the customers, where they want to be working. And I've definitely been on the other side where I've been the customer, and you get the customer success manager saying, oh, let's do a QBR and let's invite all these executives who we never really interact with normally and try to get them in. And they're like, no, why would I be doing that? Why would I be putting my time there? They're they're sort of trying to force a very specific agenda versus continuing to work through the same champions, try to understand how they can best do alignment. Obviously there's a little give and take to that, but I found that like when you try to force your process on customers sometimes too much, and it's not easy for them to adopt and work with you on it, then you can kind of end up getting nowhere. So I think that's important to call out as well. Cool. Let's move on to the next.
I could build on what you were just saying there.
Yeah,
that's
sure.
part of a culture that helps you to fit and find the right type of partner when you're selecting what your vendor is going to be, right? So knowing that about yourself and your company and your expectations, we have this kind of a culture. We love to do these kind of things. Really helps you to make those kind of selections when you're buying something, right? So if you ever go into the purchasing process, it's great to have experience in customer success because you get that real sense of how are they going to treat me? How are we going to match up? Are we going to be partners for a long time? Are we going to be adversaries at one point? Right. I like to work with people I enjoy working with. So it makes the choice a lot easier. It's a great point, Chris.
Yeah. Thanks, Paul. That's good. Those signs are for sure there, earlier in the process as well too. So that kind of goes back to like, how do you, best stay involved and get involved with the sales team and have kind of that smooth transition handoff where it doesn't even feel like it's a handoff sometimes. So cool. Well, let's move on to the next point here. So the third point is around lead generation and turning that customer success motion into net new business. So some of the things that came up within this are making sure that you're earning the right to ask for your customer to sort of advocate for you, making sure that you've got that trust established, which I think is a very similar point there on making sure that you're delivering for them before you're asking for them to deliver for you. Adoption we've talked about already, but obviously a key thing, and then making it a win-win specifically. So yeah, let's have Mark kick things off here with your thoughts.
Sure. Brief thoughts. In the high ticket sales world, I've seen work really well on CS teams. Just like one simple, clear metric around adoption. So, for example, it wasn't my client, but it was a company I worked with. They did a coaching program. They were doing massive numbers, like $1 million a month.
Might have to ask via chat.
Internet's definitely getting the best mark today.
Uh-huh.
Well, I think I lost. Am I back?
You're back. You're back.
Okay,
All right, go for it.
So their metric was 20%. 20% of their paying customers needed to land their first client for this new business within 30 days. More than 20%.
Oh, lost again. All right, let's pivot then. Why don't we pass it over to Sydney and let's talk about the win-win and if you've got any examples you wanted to share of how you've been able to do this successfully.
Yeah, for sure. So prior to, so 3 companies ago, I was at a company called Influitive, and they were an advocate marketing platform, and they focused on B2B. So the whole product was around the basis of, in B2B, identify your biggest advocates, mobilize them in an effort to drive lead generation, essentially. So definitely have a lot of experience in this. There's a wealth of different ways to do it. But one of my favorite takeaways from my experience over the 3.5 years that I was there was reciprocity and giving to get. I think that was like a big piece that our customer marketer Truman Tang is amazing, drilled home in all of us. And I think about someone named Megan Eisenberg. She's now the CMO at Trip Action. And Megan, when we got to know Megan on a personal level, she had big career aspirations. She always loved the opportunity of expanding her network. She was very big on being able to have a platform and share her learnings and network with other people. And so by us getting to know Megan, we identified what we could give to her in an effort to then get from her. And what we got from Megan by giving her a platform was ultimately a ton of referrals and lead generation of hey, you should go to Influitive. This is how I'm partnering with them, et cetera, et cetera. So I think that there's a big piece on like relationship building, reciprocity, giving to get, and incorporating that into kind of like the DNA and the model in which your CS team is operating, and naturally having the leads flow from there. I think another big piece is like, you know, if you really want to triple down, either spiff or incorporating this into compensation for the CS team, so that there's like a kind of more top of mind incentive to drive awareness of asking customers at the right time if they would be open to being a reference or giving referrals directly. That's something that I've seen to be really successful as well.
Yeah, I second that, at least for us. I think having some, you know, some type of either referral partnership or agreement, or at the very least, you know, some type of incentives around that can be really helpful. You know, I think the biggest thing, like you're saying, is like, you're talking about a real relationship that you built. You know, you really understood for her like what were the most important things for her personally, and you were able to kind of help like support that. And so in doing that, like you've, you know, established like a, you know, type of partnership that, you know, goes beyond just like, oh, hey, you're our customer and you're successfully using our product, like, do you want to refer us to others? You know, I think that's like, you kind of met the base level, but then you also took it to a, you know, personalized relationship, which really is even better.
Yeah,
Yeah,
for sure. And the one other
sometimes,
thing, oh, sorry, Chris, go for it.
I was going to say, just going, you know, going above and beyond to kind of help even outside of your specific area, I think is something that really works well.
Yeah. And I think the other piece is like that model doesn't scale easily, right? Like that is like to Paul's earlier point of like, if you have a CSM who's managing 1,000 counts, well, that's not gonna fly. But other like more scalable solutions, when there is kind of like this tech touch motion, is like if there is a CSAT survey where you're getting feedback from customers, kind of getting a sense of their satisfaction rate, if they are big fans, advocates, following up, like, is there a world where you can think of other people in your network who you would love to refer to us, or like, would you be open to being a reference? I think like being opportunistic about like when they've expressed that they're a natural advocate, they're getting value, they want to continue to like lean in, invest in the company, like using that as an opportunity to say, hey, here's how you could help. We, for example, like if we get strong CSAT, we follow up with a G2 crowd review, right? Which is like, hey, thanks so much. Like, awesome to hear you're a Raven Catalyst fan. Would you be open to sharing this publicly on G2 crowd? And, you know, we've had a massive boom in G2 crowd reviews, and, you know, really great feedback from customers sharing their experiences there. So I think that is a little bit more of a scalable way without adding like significant lift on the team.
Yeah, that's a great idea. It really is. Paul, what about from your perspective?
My background's in marketing and sales, right? And I did that for a decade, and I did product management for a decade. And every time I see something, I start to look at it, and it turns into a funnel for me. So in customer success, when I look at the funnel, it's the CRM tool. And at every stage of the process of a existing customer, as I look through the CRM tool, there's an opportunity for a couple of things. If it's an early stage within the CRM funnel, it's an opportunity to build trust. So my comment here was to start small, deliver, and repeat, because every incremental step in that trust means something longer and deeper in your relationship to get there. But the other part of that is that you can start to utilize coachable moments within that process from your leadership team to your customer success managers to find those right opportunities. As part of that teamwork, what we're seeing is there might be other channels, sales channels, that are working collaboration with or feeding into the customer success team and their processes. So understanding what that funnel is, making sure that they're educated and trained for those coachable moments, and that longevity of building trust over time really helps to accumulate the ability to sell into other divisions or other products or other services that might not be obvious up front. So if they're an existing customer trying to grow that patch or trying to sit more licenses, the customer's going to be a lot more open to you if they trust you. And your manager, as a customer success manager, the person who's leading you is going to have a lot more collaborative moments for you to understand direction and drive going forward. I mentioned here adopt or die. I've said this a couple of times on the call, but in software, if you're not adopting new technologies, if you're not diversifying your portfolio, you might not be around as long because people need different things. They need some things that are similar in parallel with it. So understanding what that lead generation is going to lead into, right? You've got something there to go to it. You're not going to, if they've got 10 widgets, they're not going to want to buy an 11th widget. That's not a really good sales plan unless you're going through a lot of widgets. But if you've got something that complements it and grows and you've got that trust, I think that's where the expansion opportunity lies. And customer success managers, customer success teams who can do that, I think are the ones who are really leading the way these days. Maybe you lost me too. My apologies, Chris.
Excellent point. I think that's okay. We're good.
We're good? Okay.
We got 99% of that, so you're good. We're building real relationships. We're building trust. We're going. We're making sure that we're being helpful, and most of all, making sure that they are, using at a high level and continuing to adopt more and more, your products and offerings. And I think that's pretty key. From my perspective, I mean, a tactical one, is perhaps tracking some of those happy customers through job changes. So, if you've done a good job getting someone to, really benefit from and see value in your product or offering at one place, if you help them be successful in their last job, they're going to want to bring you to their next job and that sort of thing. And certainly, for our clients that are in the software industry, as well as even for us on the services side, that's been a big thing. There are some people, they just go, company to company to company every time buying your product or buying your services. And so those are great champions, and it's a really good way to also, just kind of network effect, expand the folks that you can talk to. And so it's if kind of goes back to, if you made them successful, you have earned the right to ask, in the future, hey, does this new place have a incentive compensation software? Do they need one? Do they have a customer success software in place, or do we have a discussion about that? So yeah, that's something that I've seen work really well. And then there's even like specific tools like user gems, which will automatically track that information for you in your CRM and alert and that sort of thing. So that's a kind of more tactical one from my side. I know we've got some questions, so why don't we kind of go into some Q&A, and wrap up takeaways here. So the first one, it looks like, was from Arthur, and so the question is, when do you know to start hiring more customer success managers? What KPIs or metrics are you looking at to let you know that it's time to increase headcount? So I think, Sydney and Paul, looking for your guidance here, as you probably have grown your teams out, and are using some type of information to drive that decision making.
Yeah, Paul, do you want me to tackle it first? You want to tackle it first?
I'd love to hear the answer, Sydney, please. I don't want to cheat off you, but go ahead.
I want to hear your answer too. Like, I think there's no perfect formula for this one, truly. Like, I think to the best of your ability, you take a stab at it, you iterate and you learn as you go. I think that where I've typically started is, what is the experience we want to deliver our customers? What are the key engagements that we want to be able to achieve with them? What is the investment of time for a CSM to be able to do that? And then how many times can a CSM repeat that within like the customers that they have, essentially, and using that as kind of a foundation. Now, obviously, you're constantly in a state of like innovation and optimization and trying to drive further efficiency. So that's like one lens of how I've done it. I've always looked at sales pipeline as like a leading kind of indicator for me of when I need to pull the trigger for hiring. So the key data points that I have is like, what is the capacity, to the best of my ability of understanding, that a CSM can handle? What is the projected pipeline coming from sales? What is their average kind of conversion rate whenever a customer is at 90 days out, ledger prospects 90 days out, and kind of forecasting that? And then the third data point that I'm leveraging is, what is the average hiring time for the day I put a job description out to the day that I get a butt in the seat? and factoring that in as well. And so that has helped significantly, I would say, in like early days Sid career versus like Sid now, of not putting the team in a reactive state to get on our front foot as best as possible. The other kind of piece of this is what will be like, I think probably inevitably pressures that everyone faces from the board, and like what are the economics to the business of customer coverage in terms of number of logos, but more importantly, revenue. And I think there is like this perception in the industry of like X number of dollars should be managed by a CSM to justify their investment. And I think it's a bit of a backwards way of looking at it, because the ACV is in sometimes out of like the CSM's control to be able to deliver the experience that they want to deliver. So I think that's where like bringing CS to the center, the customer-led growth, bringing the data to the table, and talking about the go-to-market strategy, talking about the product and engineering strategy relative to roadmap plays a little bit more on like the second piece of the puzzle that I was referring to there.
Because I'm in Detroit, I think I'm obligated to tell a lot of automotive analogies. So here's my automotive analogy. When I'm looking ahead, right, I'm looking over the hood ornament. That's where I want to go. That's the road ahead. And when I'm looking in the rearview mirror, that's where I've just come. When I'm thinking about CSAT, NPS, customer satisfaction, that's kind of looking in the mirror to say, where are my customers today? What's their satisfaction? What is their baseline of making sure that they're happy? And if I know that I want to get to 100 miles away, it's going to be different than 1,000 miles away, right? So I need to plan every incremental mile that I'm going to go ahead in my driving experience to make sure that I'm not going off the road, I'm not going crazy. So I think you're right. It's an algebraic equation. So how many people can handle the number of clients to keep them satisfied in the CSAT score or the NPS score, or whatever your engagement score is, so that I can go achieve things. And as I'm driving forward and I fill up the tank every time, I need to make sure that I've got enough miles ahead of me to get there. That's probably a bad analogy I just came up with. But it's a ratio basically of, for every new customers that I'm bringing in the pipeline, like she said, I want to make sure that I've got enough capacity to handle those things. The other part of the equation is hiring time. Don't be afraid to bring people in from different parts of your organization. They can bring experience and expediency to making satisfaction within their customer base. If you go to an outside source, it's going to take extra time.
Yeah, it's a great point on the hiring sort of ramp time to productivity, planning ahead for that, and the anticipated need. Certainly that's been done forever on the sales side of things, and should be kind of treated pretty much the same on the customer success side as well too. Cool. And then let's see, another question we had was, how do you maintain a nurturing relationship with every customer as you scale? What does customer trust maintenance look like here, and how do you balance that?
Well, you can't have a nurturing relationship with every customer. I'm sorry if that's what you're looking for. I think that's an unrealistic goal. Not every customer wants to be nurtured. Most all of them want to be satisfied and meet the expectations of whatever they purchased for you. So I know that sounds a little snarky for me to say, but I think your expectations need to be realistic. What does customer trust mean? That you have a clear, open dialogue about what's going on, and that you're delivering exactly what you said you would. If you start to lose that trust, I think it's time to change up who's representing who on that. But I don't think it's possible to have a nurturing relationship with each and every customer. You're always going to have some customers who absolutely adore you and love you and will be true believers to the ends of the earth. But on the opposite end of that scale, there are some who they're going to give you 1-star reviews on G2 and think you're a criminal for taking their money. The best you can do is to try to make the most of them satisfied. I don't think there's an amazing relationship that all people can have. Boy, that's cynical. I'm sorry. Chris, turn me around on this one.
No. I mean, I think you're fair to some extent, and I think the other facet of that, which you didn't mention, is just that like people can be absolutely fine with what you're delivering to them without necessarily having a relationship or feeling like they need to engage too much, right? As long as they're getting what they paid for, like in some respects, there's fine, and there's going to be probably a large percentage of customers that fall in that bucket, and just making sure that like they know you're there, and if they needed you, that they would have access, and if they don't, then great, they're happy with that. I think that's fine, and that should be planned for as well. Sydney, what do you think?
I agree. I think like unrealistic to believe that every customer is going to want, need, and be successful with that type of touch. I think it all starts with expectation management, though. I think that piece is super, super critical, right from marketing through to sales expectations, through to, hey, you're getting onboarded in whatever capacity you're getting onboarded. Like these are the expectations. But I think it's also about sitting down with your customers today that may be on like the lower ARR side of it and go like, what do you feel you need to be set up for success without a CSM getting on a call with you once a month, every 2 weeks, whatever that cadence is. Like describe to me what you need and how you want to receive it for it to be valuable. And I think there's definitely a solution to be had that would still give that like love and feel and experiential side to what they're receiving without it having to be a human showing their face being assigned to their account each and every day.
I'd go back to my original comment. Know exactly what your customer loves, know what they hate, and then know what they need. And they're going to be satisfied. Everyone's satisfaction is going to be different. You said it so well, Sydney. Thanks.
Awesome. Cool. Well, I see. I'm looking at the chat. I don't think we've got more questions that are coming in, so I think we're good on Q&A. And thank you to our speaker panel. Really appreciate you guys taking the time today.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, so much for being here. I think this was a really, really great conversation. Apologize for any audio issues. Mark, thank you for being a champ here and participating in the chat. We appreciate you. The last piece I'll go over real quick is just any final words or takeaways from our panelists here. I know you all have talked a lot already, but...
I think overall, great conversation. I mean, lots of really good takeaways, learned a lot, and gives me more to think about as well.
Don't be afraid to leverage your customer success managers for success. That's what they're there for. And they've got some hidden talents that they can provide you for additional reoccurring revenue, which is such a huge part of our economy today.
And I'll say that there's 2 data streams that are available to any organization to help that organization own their market. There's the environment data stream, like just Googling stuff or doing a survey of people on the street. And then there's the customer data stream, which is what your customers are actually saying about the product or service that you're delivering and the problems they're having in going from Hell Island to Heaven Island using your product or service. Nobody else has that but you, but your org, and specifically your CS team. That is a competitive advantage. Use it to improve product, use it to drive leads, use it to improve marketing.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And thank you, Chris, for moderating. I appreciate it. And thank you, of course, to our audience for being here today and our lovely panelists for speaking. This was a really fun one. It's always nice when we get to have people from different backgrounds with different experience to contribute. So with that, I will let you all get on with your day. I know we're a couple minutes over, but that's what happens when you have a good conversation. So thank you all. Thank you, Chili Piper, for sponsoring, and we will see you next time.
Thank you.